Coming up on Need to Know, controversial, dynamic, outspoken. These are some of the words that have been used to describe the leader of the Rochester Teachers Association. Whether you're a critic or a fan, don't miss my conversation with Adam Urbanski about the future of education in Rochester. That's next. Also on the show, when you think about Jackie Robinson, don't just think about baseball. One Rochester resident who joined Robinson in the fight for civil rights says the baseball legend lived a life that continues to inspire. And when the world of art merges with dayhabilitation, you just might get the perfect recipe for joy, confidence, and empowerment. A local program shows us how. Need to Know starts right now. From his comments regarding the new code of conduct for city schools to a call for his resignation from the Democrat and Chronicle, the president of the Rochester Teachers Association has been taking some heat from various parts of the community. But Adam Urbanski has also been called a champion for public education. For more than 30 years, the former high school teacher and college professor has served at the helm of the RTA. From superintendent turnover, revised education policies, and an ever-changing school climate, among other things, he has remained a constant presence over the past few decades. Adam Urbanski joins us now to give us his take on the state of education in Rochester City Schools and the journey ahead. Welcome. It's great to have you on the program.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So, Adam, you are a prominent figure and voice locally and nationally in education, and that means you are not void of criticism. You've had quite a dose of it as of late. The Democrat and Chronicle editorial board has called for your resignation. They listed among its priorities for 2016 a continued push for your resignation. Do you think at times that you are made to be a scapegoat for the current state of academic achievement issues in Rochester City Schools, or do you think there's some justification for some of the scrutiny?
Well, scrutiny is always good, and I welcome it. As a matter of fact, if someone can show that the position that teachers are taking on an issue is the wrong position, then I work very hard to change that. But I think that I'm disappointed that the local newspaper, instead of reporting the news, is trying to create news. It's not up to them to decide who should represent teachers. It's up to the teachers. And we have a free, independent election every 2 years. And as long as teachers show their confidence in me, then my responsibility is to inform the Board of Education and the community about what the collective wisdom of teachers says about an issue. And that's what I have been trying to do for the last 3 decades.
And one of the issues that you've been working on with teachers, one of the big topics of the moment in the city schools, school safety and the code of conduct. In May, the RTA's governing board adopted a resolution calling on the city school district to offer certain measures before implementing the code. And the RTA does not support the new draft code as it stands right now, from my understanding.
Oh no, that's a misunderstanding that's pretty prevalent in the community right now. We do support the code of conduct. The difference between our position and the position of the board at this time is that we know for a fact that this code of conduct cannot succeed if it doesn't include, if it's not accompanied by certain investments in more services, social, emotional, and mental health services for students who need them, in alternative settings for kids who are not only not learning right now in the regular schools, but are preventing learning for others. So really the difference is only whether or not this can succeed without those resources. Now let me also tell you that this is not a matter of speculation. The very same kind of code was recently implemented a year or two ago. In Los Angeles, it made the situation worse. In New York City, it made the situation worse. In Syracuse, it made the situation worse. And their conclusion was, wish we had included the additional investments to make this code improve the climate in schools rather than create more chaos, more disorder, and more violence.
So you support the code if these additional measures of supports are included?
Yes.
Got it. And then how do you see what we have? Let's say these supports come into play. How do you see the code moving the needle forward, pushing it forward in terms of creating this environment where students and teachers, a more successful environment in terms of relationship between students and teachers?
Well, we looked at the proposed budget that Rochester City School District is poised to adopt very soon, to see if any of those supports are reflected in that budget for next year. Virtually nothing is. Virtually nothing. No additional alternative settings for students.
So I'm going to interrupt real quick. Why does the city school district then say we are providing some of these supports that the union is calling for?
I don't know why they are saying that, but I think you should juxtapose what they're saying to what they're budgeting, and then make your own conclusions what to believe. So until it's in their budget, the kids who need social workers, especially at the elementary school, won't have them. The kids who need school psychologists won't have them. We have been calling for over 3 decades for a case manager in every school. That would be a social worker whose only job would be to match kids with needs with the agencies who already have the resources to help them. But tragically, the families that need access to those agencies the most are the least likely to know what the questions are and where to go. So until they provide those resources, we're cautioning this community. This will be a disappointment. This will not improve the climate. Now, we don't deny the right of the district and the board to implement any code of conduct they deem appropriate. We're just exercising our responsibility as people who are with the students day in, day out, every day, to let the public know that they are shooting for an ambitious goal without providing the resources, and we know how that movie ends.
I'm going to move on to receivership, which seems to be a word that we're hearing more and more in Rochester City schools. Initially, there were 14 schools on the state's list of struggling and persistently struggling schools that could be taken by an outside receiver if improvements aren't made. How is the RTA responding? I know you initially said for these schools that are on these lists that you would provide supports and workshops. Where do things stand right now?
Well, actually, we're working collaboratively with the district, and I think we're days away from a conclusion to our negotiations on this. The district has made some proposals on what kind of additional resources to provide to the schools, what additional flexibility would be needed, and we are very much interested in the same thing. So you will see that the district and the teachers union are on the same page when it comes to improving schools that are struggling. Now, they're not struggling because they got bad teachers or bad kids. They're struggling because they've been neglected for years and sometimes for decades. So the response should be to make these schools have access to the kind of additional supports that will help kids to succeed. And we think that the receivership legislation itself is wrong-headed, that instead of taking over the school and handing it over to somebody else, you should actually make them into community schools, because nobody could be expected to care about these schools more than the people who live in that school and around that school.
Is that a possibility?
Yeah, it's a strong possibility. As a matter of fact, Senator Funke has already introduced, just recently, legislation in the New York State Senate. We hope that someone will do the same thing in the Assembly, that would essentially abolish this kind of receivership approach and replace it with an approach for community schools instead.
What's your response to the mayor's proposal for a receivership district? I know you were quoted in an interview as saying this is nothing more than a backdoor to mayoral control. She had said that's not what she's implying. How do you think the state legislature will respond?
Well, how is this not a backdoor to mayoral control? She is saying, let me have about 1/3 of the schools or more, almost half of the schools, and I will invite chartering corporations, profit-making chartering corporations, to take over the schools, and she will call the shots. That's mayoral control. That's a first step towards mayoral control. Now, if the mayor knows something that the rest of us don't on how to make education better, she should spell it out, because we would embrace it if she has solutions that we can't envision. So I think there is an important role for the mayor to play to make streets safe so that schools could be safe, to provide more health and social and emotional supports for kids, and to lobby with the county to pitch in on that, as they at one time did. So I'm not in favor of this particular proposal, and I don't think it's going anywhere. I don't think there is enough support in the legislature. This would require legislation. But I do agree that the mayor should be welcomed if she's interested in joining with educators to improve our schools.
As one might expect with a superintendent search, there's been a lot of talk and speculation in regards to whom the board will select for the job. Given everything we've discussed so far and the issues we haven't had time to bring to the table today, what traits would make an ideal superintendent for the city school district moving forward in 2016 and beyond?
Well, someone who could bring everybody together to the same agenda. And there is really only one legitimate goal around which we should all coalesce, and that is, how do you increase, how do you heighten the chances for better student learning? We need somebody who would be invitational to everyone, who would not pit one group against another, because you can't really provide the kind of education that our students deserve and need if you ignore everything that happens before school and after school. So we need a more comprehensive approach.
Adam Urbanski, longtime president of the Rochester Teachers Association, thank you for joining me today. For continuing coverage and special reports on education in the Rochester region, be sure to tune in to WXXI Television, WXXI Radio, and check us out online at WXXInews.org. If you happen to catch the new documentary on the life and times of baseball legend Jackie Robinson by filmmaker Ken Burns, you may have recognized a familiar face. Historic footage captured scientist, educator, and civil rights leader Walter Cooper standing side by side with Jackie Robinson. Though the scene may have been a short one, the story behind it reflects the life of a man that transcended the baseball field. Rochester resident Walter Cooper joins me now to talk about a legacy that continues to inspire, perhaps in ways you may not realize. Welcome to the program. It's good to see you again.
Thank you.
So the documentary Jackie Robinson aired for the first time this spring on WXXI. And I understand you were watching the film when all of a sudden you realized you were looking at a younger version of yourself on the screen, right next to Jackie. So I want you to, I know Walter, your history runs deep, but this connection may surprise some viewers. So how and when did you first cross paths with Jackie Robinson?
Well, I crossed paths with him in 1948 when the Pittsburgh Pirates played at Forbes Field, and their opponent was the Brooklyn Dodgers. And I hung around and greeted Jackie Robinson. It was very interesting because my mother's family knew the Robinsons when they were in Cairo, Georgia. The Robinsons left in 1920 and went to California. My parents left in 1921 and came to the Pittsburgh area.
So, we know that Robinson shattered racial barriers in baseball. Martin Luther King Jr. said Robinson was a sit-inner before sit-ins, a freedom rider before freedom rides, and his influence was beyond the world of baseball. In what ways did he take on the fight for civil rights, in particular when he retired from baseball in 1957, that some people may not be aware of?
Well, Jackie was, in a sense, the aggressiveness that he showed in baseball and still in a base. That was somewhat of his approach to civil rights. For example, he was a Republican initially, Republican modeled with friendships with Mayor Lindsay and the Rockefellers and others. But then when the Republican Party started actually presenting as candidates people like Goldwater and others, and it began the Southern strategy, Jackie drifted away from the Republican Party. He thought they were on the wrong track and that they were trying to duplicate, in the South particularly, what formerly the racist Democratic politicians, Bilbo and Stennis and Faubus and others, illustrated in their public pronouncements and policies.
In the mid to late 1960s, while you were working at Eastman Kodak, you were also a special consultant to the Small Business Administration. You led the Black Economic Development Advisory Council, and this served as an SBA advisory group. And it was through that role that we saw you in the documentary Jackie Robinson. Set the scene. What led you, Robinson, and several others to march to the White House, asked to meet with President Nixon, and really gain national press attention? And why did you reach out to Jackie to be a part of that moment?
Well, Jackie was part of the committee, which included Shirley Chisholm, Dorothy Height, National Council of Negro Women, Earl Graves, who later published Black Enterprise magazine, and other prominent African-American leaders, many of them who had been civil rights activists. Others had focused on education, like Naylor Fitzhugh, who was the first Black to graduate with an MBA out of Harvard School of Business. And so this committee was formed because we were deeply concerned. For example, in 1967, out of 27,000 GM dealerships in the United States, only 7 of them were minority owned. And so we were focusing on a greater involvement of African American and women in businesses in America.
Well, in that scene, I found a Pittsburgh Courier article from February 8th, 1969. It was citing the story and the scene from the film, and I'm going to read a brief portion of this article. We have it on screen as well. President Nixon apparently didn't want Negroes to darken his White House doors because he refused to see 10 prominent Black men who wanted to talk about Nixon's pet project, Black capitalism. The men who tried unsuccessfully to see the president included former baseball great Jackie Robinson. Led by Dr. Walter Cooper, Rochester, New York, the 10 well-dressed Negro men arrived at the northwest gate of the White House and asked the police on duty if they could see Nixon. And then it goes on to talk about how a White House official informed you that you would not be able to see the president, and you said, "If we can't see the president, we will leave." Cooper politely told the officer, "We came to see the president, we will leave. Thank you, sir." So what was the outcome of that day? And did you really, I mean, some might think, how can you walk up to the White House and ask to see the most important man in the United States?
The White House had been alerted that Jackie Robinson and some other African Americans would like to see him, to present him with a document expressing our deep concern about the lack of progress of African Americans and women in developing businesses and having business opportunities. And so that was the focus of the presentation that we had hoped to present to the president.
And talked about the aftermath, what happened after that, and also how did it steer your work and Robinson's work moving forward?
Well, after that, many members of that committee went out into other areas, but maintained a focus on civil rights. For example, one member of the committee was Marion Barry, who later became the mayor of Washington, D.C. Earl Graves later published Black Enterprise magazine, and all of them emphasized greater participation in the institutions of the United States in the communities where they lived.
Before we close, I want to know, Jackie Robinson died in 1972 of a heart attack. He was 53 years old at the time. You've told me that his life has and will continue to inspire. In what ways?
I think it inspires in a sense that I had the opportunity of knowing a man who had gone through many ordeals as an athlete and certainly as an officer in the U.S. Army, the Jackie Robinson and other prominent black athletes during World War II faced terrible conditions in the South in trying to exercise their service to the United States in the armed forces. For example, Ray Robinson and Joe Louis faced problems in the South.
Well, special thank you to my guest, Walter Cooper, for joining me today. And you can catch Jackie Robinson, a two-part, 4-hour documentary by Ken Burns, Sarah Burns, and David McMahon this Sunday, June 5th at 6 p.m. right here on WXXI TV. You can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. Those wise words from Maya Angelou seem to coincide with the Arc of Monroe's Community Arts Connection. The Dehabilitation Program supports individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Through music, dance, theater, visual, and literary arts, participants can become professional artists in the community, expand their skills for employment, or simply take on a new hobby while sharpening their creative edge. WXXI's Arts in Focus program recently visited the Community Arts Connection and filed this report.
I knew somebody would take the bait.
Dance as a human being is one of the very first things that humans ever started to do. It's so evolutionarily built into us. It's one of the key elements that connects the right and the left side of your brain. So naturally, people are dancers.
As a human race, we're creative people. And I think everybody has a need and a want, even if they don't realize it, to create and to make art, and it enhances, the individual's lives, and I think it's just an outlet to just be who you are.
I have always looked at my students as music students. Music education itself hasn't changed in 3,000 years, and I believe everybody can do music of some kind, regardless of any background or any physical or supposed limitation.
Community Arts Connection is a rehabilitation program that supports people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. They're served by the Arc of Monroe County.
Oh, good. And then when you get down here, kind of get mushy.
At Community Arts Connection, we actually have two programs. We have a job readiness program, and then we have the arts-based program. And we utilize visual arts, dance, theater, music, fiber arts, literary arts to allow the individuals to become either professional artists within the community, or for them to take hobbies or interests that they have and learn skills that will either get them employment or they've had employment and now they're ready to just have fun.
Right? Yeah. So there's white snow back here?
Yes.
And there's snow back here?
Yeah.
What's this? I'm in charge of the art studio, so I teach 10 different classes a week, and it ranges from jewelry making, ceramics, to painting, and working with recycled objects. We pretty much have a wide range of classes. I think art in itself is good for anyone.
I enjoy working with fiber arts. I like working things with my hands, like drawing pictures and painting. After I was coming here, I felt like I've been creative. It makes me feel more relaxed and more enjoyable doing things.
It's a nice size, Mom. As with any individual, they might not be able to have the creative outlet at home. They might not have the materials at home or have the support to create art or make music or dance. So kind of gives them the opportunity more here than coming to a program like this. And it's teaching them the skills that they might not have learned in school.
You want to be beautiful, right? So do your best possible dancing. Be creative. You can copy your neighbors, but don't follow them
A lot of
around.
people who are disabled grow up being told a lot that they can't do something or they can't do lots of things. I try to do the opposite. What more can you do? Show me. Sometimes there isn't anything more, but a lot of times there is.
My name is Brenna Glenn, and I'm an artist and in dance troupe. It makes me feel happy that I'm able to be with my friends and dance and perform.
I think by giving them this opportunity, we're tapping into something that a lot of people have either been told they can't do, or people might have a curiosity about. Can I do this? Am I a dancer? What do I look like dancing? Will people still like me if I get out there and do my groove thing? And then the recognition that comes with the skills you learn when you become a dancer. Okay, well, now I know my right from my left. Now I can identify music skills like tempo and beat and pulse.
Good job, Miss
And everyone can do the same dance at the same time if they want to. Does it look like dance you might pay $55 to go see at a big theater? No, but it is dance, and that person is dancing, and that person might be doing a dance they've never done before. So it might not look like much, but to that person, that could be everything.
I started doing music for 13 years. I play trombone. I like all music. I like, there's jazz standards, blues, rock, classic rock, and Motown.
When they're playing, they're to a very professional level now in terms of performance and in terms of playing with each other. So I think socially it's added dimension, intellectually it's added dimension, and to me the bottom line is fun.
Arts benefits anyone, whether you have a disability or you don't. Everyone has abilities, and having a creative outlet in life enriches one's life. So when they have found an interest, whether it's in art, dance, music, theater, we're helping them hone those skills so that they can share their love of their hobby with other people, with their families, with themselves. And it gives that creative outlet that I think all human beings want to have the opportunity to partake in.
And that's it for this edition of Need to Know, Rochester's News Magazine. I'm your host, Helene B. and Duty Hofer. Thank you for joining me tonight and throughout the weekend, and thank you for supporting news programming here on WXXI TV.